The air on Xylos was thick, humid and heavy with the scent of alien flora, a heady mix of sweet pollen and something sharply metallic, like ozone after a storm. Towering, bioluminescent trees, their colossal trunks disappearing into a perpetual emerald haze, cast an eerie, otherworldly glow. Beneath them, colossal carnivorous plants pulsed with a silent, hungry rhythm, and the jungle floor squelched underfoot, a labyrinth of knotted roots and decaying leaves. This was Xylos, the Emerald Labyrinth, beautiful yet utterly suffocating, a vibrant death trap. Deep within this verdant prison, what remained of Vanguard 7, an elite human reconnaissance unit, was trapped. Their sleek, advanced shuttle, once a beacon of cutting-edge technology, lay mangled in a ravine, a testament to the sudden, brutal atmospheric turbulence that had dragged them down. Now, there were just 5 exhausted, desperate figures, hunted by a threat they couldn't see, hear, or outsmart, with their own advanced tech. Their pursuers were known only as the Stalkers. They weren't your typical alien aggressors. They were the apex predators of Xylos, possessing an almost supernatural ability to detect intruders. Their senses were incredibly refined, honed over millennia to hunt by the most subtle of cues, the faint electromagnetic signatures of technology, the barely perceptible vibrations of a human footfall, or even the minute heat trails left by warm electronics. Visually, they were terrifying. Their chameleon-like skin shifted to match the jungle. Their multi-jointed limbs allowed them to move with unnerving speed through the densest undergrowth, and their silent, relentless pursuit was chilling. The problem quickly became horrifyingly clear. Every piece of human technology they tried to use, their long-range comms, their standard recon drones, even the subtle hum of their personal environmental suits, became a blaring siren to the Stalkers. A thermal scan for a safe path ahead. A squad of Stalkers would materialize from the foliage, moving with lethal grace. A desperate attempt to send a distress signal? The jungle would erupt in pursuit. Their state-of-the-art drones, designed for precise surveillance, were useless. Too noisy, too visible to the Stalkers' unique organic sensors, they were shot down before they could transmit anything useful. Vanguard 7 was blind, deaf, and utterly exposed. Sergeant Kai Ghost Chen watched his comrades, his jaw tight. He was the unit's survival and stealth specialist, a man who preferred the feel of dirt to a datapad, and whose expertise lay in the forgotten arts of terrestrial wilderness survival. He had an almost intuitive understanding of natural materials, a knack for moving silently where others crashed. He carried only a basic multi-tool knife on his belt, and a small, worn leather pouch of earth seeds, a peculiar personal habit from his days growing up on a remote, rewilded Earth reservation. He found the unit's utter reliance on their now useless tech frustrating to the point of agony. Their training manuals, filled with protocols for dealing with sophisticated energy shields and laser grids, had nothing on chameleon-skinned hunters who could smell a microchip. "Any luck, Sparky?" Kai whispered to Corporal Sparky Jones, the unit's brilliant but cynical tech specialist, whose fingers hovered over a shattered comm unit. Sparky shook his head, his face grim under the bioluminescent glow. "No, Sarge, this jungle's fighting back. Every signal we put out, they're on us like flies on a fresh kill. My best recon drone lasted 20 seconds before it melted." He kicked a charred piece of what was once a highly advanced sensor. "These Stalkers aren't just advanced, they're different. Like their whole ecosystem evolved just to negate our tech." The unit's demoralization was palpable. Specialist Anya Sharma, usually vibrant, sat slumped against a towering tree, her face streaked with dirt and exhaustion. Commander Jax, his stoic demeanor faltering, ran a hand over his thinning hair. Their supplies were dwindling, their energy reserves were critically low. Hope was fading with every passing minute of their fruitless hiding. They were exhausted, their nerves frayed by the constant, unseen threat. The jungle itself felt alive, watching them, breathing around them. The Stalkers were always there, a whisper in the leaves, a vibration through the soil, an invisible noose tightening around their necks. Kai closed his eyes, listening. Not to the clicks of Sparky's failing tech, but to the jungle's own symphony. The soft rustle of leaves in the humid breeze, the distant, muffled calls of unseen creatures, the faint creak of ancient trees. He thought of the way a spider's web could hold dew without breaking, how a hollow reed could funnel the faintest sound. A wild, desperate idea sparked in his mind. An idea so ludicrous, so primitive, it might just be the only logical path left. It would involve mud, leaves, and a lot of blind faith. The air was heavy with the silence of despair, broken only by the chirps and rustles of the alien jungle. Commander Jax, his face etched with fatigue, finally looked at Kai. "Sergeant Chen, you have an idea. Speak." Kai took a deep breath. "Our tech is too loud, too hot, too detectable. These stalkers, they hunt by signature, so we need to make drones without a signature. We can't be silent like their tech. We need to be silent, like this jungle." He gestured around him, towards a towering fern that shimmered with faint bioluminescence. "I'm talking about building them from natural materials." A tense silence followed. Then, Corporal Sparky Jones let out a short, incredulous laugh. "You want to build drones out of leaves and dirt, Sarge? Are you serious? We're stranded, not auditioning for a primitive tech expo." Anya Sharma, though exhausted, lifted her head. "It's not entirely illogical, Sparky. If their sensors are tuned to our electromagnetic output, then something organic might be invisible." "Precisely," Kai affirmed, a flicker of conviction in his eyes. "This jungle is full of incredible materials. We have leaves thinner than paper, stronger than steel. Hollow reeds that are lighter than any alloy. And I've seen magnetic sands near the ravine where we crashed. We can make ultralight frames, silent blades, and whisper-quiet motors." Sparky, rubbing a hand over his tired face, sighed. "Even if we could fashion a motor from mud, how would you power it? And how do we control it? And transmit data?" "My comms are fried." "We'll adapt," Kai said simply, pulling his multi-tool knife from its sheath. "Low-frequency bursts, short range. We won't transmit data, we'll whisper it. And for power, we'll improvise. Just like we always do." The unit's initial skepticism was thick enough to cut with a knife, but despair, like hunger, was a powerful motivator. With every passing hour, the stalker's presence grew stronger, the invisible noose tightening. They were willing to try anything. Naipi. Their desperate mission began. The first challenge was material gathering, a task fraught with danger. Kai, accompanied by Jax and Lena, whose botanical knowledge of alien flora was invaluable, ventured deeper into the emerald labyrinth. They moved with extreme caution, every rustle of the leaves, every distant animal call, a potential warning. They needed specific materials, incredibly thin, broad leaves that shimmered with an almost metallic strength, hollow, incredibly lightweight reeds that resonated with a low hum, and fine, almost invisible jungle vines that possessed surprising tensile strength. Each foray risked detection. Once a stalker's shadowy form passed within meters of their hiding spot, its multifaceted eyes sweeping the undergrowth, forcing them to freeze for agonizing minutes, barely breathing. Lena had to identify non-toxic sap, essential for binding and strengthening the fragile leaves. The crafting began in a small, concealed alcove under the roots of a colossal bioluminescent tree, chosen for its natural concealment. This was their makeshift workshop, a strange blend of ancient craft and repurposed futurism. Kai's meticulous hands worked with the organic materials, while Sparky, initially skeptical, offered grudging high-tech advice on low-tech problems. He'd salvaged a miniature soldering iron from the shuttle's wreckage, powered by scavenged energy cells, to bond the incredibly fine, repurposed wires Kai pulled from their destroyed drone circuits. The biggest hurdle was crafting the whisper-quiet motors. Kai experimented with local clays, mixing them with minute particles of magnetic sand he'd found. He used the thinnest salvaged wires as coils. Early attempts were hilariously frustrating. The first motor he tried to spin smoked like a miniature volcano, seizing up instantly. The second vibrated violently, sounding like a buzzing insect trapped in a jar, a definite stalker magnet. One drone, its leaf blades wobbling wildly, spun out of control and crashed into a thick-stemmed plant, disintegrating into a pile of organic dust. "See," Sparky muttered, wiping clay from his hands. Impossible. These alien materials just aren't designed for this. They're not designed for your logic, Sparky. Kai countered, his jaw set. He picked up another reed, his brow furrowed in concentration. We need to work with them. Understand their natural properties. He observed how the wind moved through the jungle, how different leaves caught the air. He began to shape the blades not like standard propellers, but like the delicate, silent wings of Xylosian insects he'd observed. Days bled into nights. The unit's morale dipped lower with each failure, each near miss with a stalker. Anya often sat in silent contemplation, sketching the movements of the jungle's smaller, elusive creatures, offering insights into natural aerodynamics. Commander Jax, usually a man of action, was forced to stand watch, his tension palpable as he listened to the failures, knowing their lives depended on this absurd endeavor. They were all exhausted, their supplies dwindling faster than Kai could create, but deep down, they knew this wasn't just an experiment, it was their only hope. Then, after countless failures, a breakthrough. Kai shaped a small, hollow reed into a perfect, lightweight frame. He meticulously attached 2 razor-thin, broad leaves, reinforced with a sticky, quick-drying sap Lena had identified. And the motor, a tiny sphere of hardened clay embedded with salvaged microcoils, gave a faint, almost imperceptible hum. He flicked a switch on a salvaged power cell. The tiny drone rose. It wobbled, but it flew. It hummed, but the sound was so faint, so much like the natural buzzing of the jungle, that it was easily masked by a slight breeze. For a brief moment, hope flickered in the exhausted eyes of Vanguard 7. It was still crude, fragile, and almost comically small, but it was their first whisper of possibility. The hidden alcove under the colossal bioluminescent tree, previously a place of quiet desperation, was now a makeshift, bustling workshop of chaos. The soft, earthy smells of leaves and damp clay mixed oddly with the faint tang of Sparky's salvaged soldering iron, powered by a flickering energy cell. The contrast was stark. Kai's calloused hands meticulously shaping fragile organic materials, while Sparky, grumbling good-naturedly, used his few remaining high-tech tools to fuse impossibly thin wires. He kept a tiny, worn sonic screwdriver, a personal trinket, always close by, sometimes using it for incredibly precise adjustments on Kai's crude mechanisms. "Another one, Sarge?" Sparky asked, holding up a new coil of salvaged copper wire, barely thicker than a hair. "We're running out of these. Soon, it'll be just actual vine." "Good," Kai replied, carefully trimming a broad, razor-thin leaf with his knife. "The less tech, the less they feel us." Their initial success had been exhilarating, but fleeting. One drone was a curiosity, a network was their only chance. This meant more materials, more painstaking construction, and significantly higher risk. The unit had to embark on increasingly dangerous foraging missions, deep into the hostile Xylosian jungle. Lena, with her keen eye for botany, became indispensable, identifying not only the strongest leaves and hollowest reeds, but also subtle, naturally occurring magnetic sands and clays. Commander Jax, ever the leader, organized the foraging parties, ensuring they maintained strict stealth protocols, even as fatigue gnawed at them all. The process of building the network was a test of patience and precision. First, the frames. These were meticulously crafted from hollowed reeds, almost weightless, their internal structures naturally channeling air currents. Kai had discovered specific types of fungus that, when dried and powdered, formed an incredibly strong, lightweight adhesive to bind the reeds without adding significant weight. Then, the wings and blades. These were the heart of the drone's stealth. Kai and Anya, whose sketches of Xylosian insect wings proved invaluable, shaped razor-thin, broad leaves, carefully selected for their flexibility and strength. They were then reinforced with a quick-drying, incredibly sticky sap that Lena had found, making them surprisingly durable. When spun by the motor, they created almost no air disturbance, mimicking the silent glide of indigenous Xylosian creatures. The motors were Kai's personal masterpiece of improvisation. Tiny spheres of hardened clay, mixed with the magnetic sands, housed salvaged microcoils. These improvised motors emitted only the faintest, almost imperceptible hum, easily masked by the constant natural sounds of the jungle, the rustling leaves, the distant calls of fauna, the dripping of condensation from the canopy. Sparky, initially a skeptic, found himself grudgingly impressed by their efficiency. "Logically, this shouldn't work," he muttered one night, examining a spinning motor. "But it does. It's illogical efficiency." Finally, the sensors and data transfer. This was where Sparky's remaining tech came into play. He repurposed tiny, low-power optical sensors from their comms units. These sensors were only capable of short-range visual data or detecting subtle thermal fluctuations, signals too weak for the stalkers to register as artificial. Data transfer was the trickiest part. Slow and intermittent, it relied on a highly secure, low-frequency burst transmission system that Sparky had to jury-rig from a salvaged wristcom. It was like sending whispers through a storm. Each drone was a nerve-wracking first flight test. The jungle itself seemed to conspire against them. A sudden gust of wind, an unexpected screech from a predatory bird, or the distant rumbling of a Xylosian rock-eater could send a fragile drone wobbling, threatening to crash. Every crash meant wasted materials, wasted time, and the horrifying risk of detection. One evening, during a test of their third drone, a stalker patrol passed terrifyingly close to their hidden workshop. The drone, a mere meter above the canopy, hummed its barely audible tune. The tension was suffocating. The stalker, a blur of shifting greens and browns, paused. Its head tilted, its multifaceted eyes scanning the air. Kai, holding his breath, watched as its antennae twitched. It was so close, its unique organic sensors stretching, probing the environment. The drone, indistinguishable from the jungle's natural sounds, was a ghost. The stalker finally moved on, its massive, jointed legs carrying it silently through the undergrowth, leaving Kai and Sparky trembling, with a mix of fear and triumph. It proved their terrifying sensory abilities, and the impossible success of Kai's improvisation. But the challenges were escalating. Specific types of leaves or reeds became harder to find, forcing them into riskier, deeper jungle forays. Environmental hazards seemed to target their fragile drones. Violent, unforecasted atmospheric storms would rip through the canopy, threatening to tear apart their creations. Predatory flora, like massive, sticky vines, would occasionally lash out, trying to snatch the flying drones from the air. And other aggressive jungle creatures, disturbed by the subtle changes in their environment, became more hostile. Worst of all, the stalkers were getting closer. Their patrols were more frequent, their sensory sweeps more intense. They might use their own subtle tracking methods, sending out tiny bioluminescent scouts that glowed faintly, moving through the undergrowth, searching for any anomaly. The pressure was immense. Vanguard 7 was weaving an invisible net, but the hunters were closing in. The network of whisper-choir drones spread through the Xylosian canopy, like invisible whispers. Each drone, a testament to Kai's ingenious improvisation, moved with a gentle rustle, its faint hum easily lost amidst the jungle's natural symphony. To the stalkers' hyper-tuned organic senses, they were nothing more than a new type of insect, a phantom in the background noise of their world. "They're working, Sarge," Sparky breathed, his face alight with a mixture of disbelief and triumph as fragmented visual data flickered across his jury-rigged wristcom. It was crude, blocky, and often broken by static, but it was intelligence, the first they'd had in days. The drones, moving like true ghosts, began to map the stalkers' territory, their patrol routes, the hidden nests where they rested, and most importantly, crucial sensory blind spots, if any existed. The payoff was immediate and invaluable. One drone, nestled high in a bioluminescent tree, captured a continuous loop of a stalker patrol. Their movements were precise, methodical, but also predictable. Another drone, skimming low over a cluster of giant pitcher-like plants, sent back images of faint heat signatures. "They're reacting," Lena observed, her voice quiet with fascination. "Their patrols are becoming agitated. They can sense something is off, but they can't pinpoint it. It's like an itch they can't scratch." Indeed, on the comms, the stalkers' subtle clicks and chirps, usually a pattern of controlled hunting, now contained bursts of what Lena's linguistic analysis categorized as confusion and frustration. The hunters were bewildered. Then came the major breakthrough. A drone, sent on an incredibly risky deep reconnaissance mission, ventured into a massive, ancient geological fissure. This wasn't just a crack in the earth, it was a sprawling, subterranean cave system, unseen from the surface. The images were shaky, dark, and intermittent, but they revealed a network of tunnels, cutting deep beneath the stalkers' main hunting grounds. It was a potential escape route, one invisible from ground level, and too deep for their typical patrols to penetrate. The only catch? The fissure was treacherous, filled with unknown dangers, but it was a path where the stalkers' superior senses would be significantly dulled. "This is it," Kai declared, tracing the drone's projected path on a crude map drawn on a large leaf. "This is our exit." The game changed. Kai began to use the drone network not just for observation, but to actively mislead the stalkers. Sending single drones on false trails, he created subtle, fleeting distractions. A drone might deliberately crash near a stalker patrol, just enough to generate a faint rustle of leaves that the aliens would investigate, drawing them away from Vanguard 7's true position. It was a thrilling, high-stakes game of cat and mouse, played on an entirely new, almost spiritual level. Drone Alpha 3 is diverting a patrol near the eastern water source. Sparky reported, a manic grin on his face. "They're falling for it. They think it's a new kind of beetle." But the game was dangerous. On one occasion, a drone, pushing its limits, ventured too close to a stalker nest. It managed to transmit one final, blurry image before its signal died, a multi-jointed limb reaching out, a blur of motion. The drone was lost, but crucially, it wasn't detected as an artificial construct. The stalkers likely thought it was a particularly large, misguided insect. However, the resulting search brought them terrifyingly close to the human unit's hidden alcove. "Stalkers inbound! 3 clicks, closing fast!" Jax hissed, his rifle raised. The humans scrambled, packing their meager supplies in desperate, silent haste. Kai quickly deployed a new drone, sending it on a loud, deliberate crash course in the opposite direction. The stalkers, diverted by the sound, sped off, leaving Vanguard 7 breathing heavily in their wake. It was a close call, a reminder that even the most ingenious plan carried immense risk. The drone network was their eyes, but the jungle was still very much a hostile, unpredictable enemy. They knew their time was running out. The stalkers were confused, but their confusion was turning into relentless, focused fury. With the vast, ancient geological fissure mapped by Kai's drones, the escape plan was set, a daring, perilous journey through the unseen underbelly of Xylos. It was treacherous, fraught with unknown dangers beneath the jungle floor, but it was their only chance. The stalkers, for all their keen senses, were creatures of the canopy and forest floor. The deep, winding caverns of the fissure were their blind spot. "This will be tight," Kai murmured, reviewing the flickering drone footage of the fissure's entrance on Sparky's jury-rigged comm. "Low ceiling in places. And we don't know what else lives down there." "Better than being a stalker's snack," Jax replied grimly, checking his weapon. The silent exodus began under the cover of Xylos's dim, bioluminescent night. The human unit moved like shadows through the dense undergrowth, guided by the whisper-quiet drones above. Each drone, a beacon of improbable engineering, moved ahead, its leaf blades rustling softly, its tiny sensor feeding vital if fragmented, data back to Kai's wristcom. They acted as their invisible eyes, scouting ahead, warning of threats, and actively diverting stalker patrols. The tension was a living thing. One drone spotted a stalker just meters away, its chameleon skin rippling, as it investigated a disturbance. Kai immediately sent another drone to create a loud, attention-grabbing rustle further away, drawing the stalker's attention while the humans froze, barely breathing, their hearts pounding in their chests. The sound of a falling rock, or a snapped twig underfoot, would trigger heart-stopping pauses, every nerve alert for the telltale shift in the jungle's ambient hum that signaled an approaching stalker. Anya moved with an almost ethereal grace, her years of outdoor training helping her blend with the environment, while Sparky, less accustomed to physical stealth, stumbled more often, each near-fall sending a jolt of fear through the group. As they neared the fissure, the stalkers' confusion began to morph into outright fury. Their clicks and chitters, previously agitated, now became sharp, aggressive calls. They knew something was wrong. Their territory was being invaded, but by what? They activated a full, desperate hunt, pushing their organic senses to their absolute limit. The faint hum of the Nexus Prime's presence, if it was online and nearby, was probably not noticed by the stalkers due to their own sensory overload. One of the last remaining drones, drone Delta 7 flying guard duty, sent a final, desperate burst of static. Massive stalker converge east flank. They're pushing through the old fungal patch, Sparky gasped. They found our trail, Jax yelled. Move, now. They broke into a desperate dash, the entrance to the fissure a gaping maw ahead. The stalkers were close, their multi-jointed limbs tearing through the foliage, their fury a tangible wave behind them. The last two drones with a silent command from Kai peeled away, deliberately crashing and creating frantic flutters in the opposite direction, sacrificing themselves to draw the stalkers away from the fissure's mouth. They plunged into the darkness of the fissure, the sudden cold and echoing silence a stark contrast to the humid, noisy jungle. The stalkers' enraged roars faded above them, muffled by the earth. They were safe for now. Extraction and a new understanding. Days later, battered, exhausted, but alive, Vanguard 7 emerged on the far side of the continent, guided by their last flickering drone. A Valerian emergency beacon, activated by a preset timer, pulsed faintly, and soon, a rescue shuttle descended through the Xylosian clouds. They were extracted, barely. Their survival was a miracle, entirely thanks to Kai's impossible drones. News of their escape and the bizarre technology that enabled it spread like wildfire across the galactic alliances. Kai's methods were instantly recognized as revolutionary. His organic drone technology, dismissed as absurd only weeks prior, became a new field of military and scientific study. Militaries across the galaxy began to rethink their reliance on high-tech solutions, realizing that sometimes the simplest, most harmonious approach was the most effective. Kai Ghost Chen was no longer just a sergeant, he was now the Weaver of Silence, a legend who had outsmarted one of the galaxy's most formidable predators with leaves and mud. He continued to develop stealth tech using natural principles, proving that the quietest solutions could indeed be the most effective, especially against an enemy that hunted noise. The stalkers of Xylos remained utterly bewildered. Their perfectly evolved senses, designed to track any anomaly in their ecosystem, continued to categorize the fleeting disturbances as unusual environmental anomalies. They never realized they were outsmarted by mere leaves, reeds, and repurposed human ingenuity. They continued to hunt, but a subtle, unquantifiable frustration now laced their territorial calls, a silent acknowledgement of a game they no longer fully understood. Back on a pristine starship, far from the emerald hell of Xylos, Kai tended to a small, potted plant from the jungle, a quiet memento of their ordeal. In the vast, silent cargo bay, a simple, leaf-based prototype drone hovered, almost imperceptibly, its clay motor a faint, almost melodic hum. Kai watched it, a faint smile on his lips. He knew the true quiet lay not in the absence of sound, but in harmony with the environment itself. And sometimes, the oldest wisdom was the best weapon.